I never thought I'd find myself standing at the edge of desperation. But that's exactly where I was when the rent was due and my bank account was a ghost town. My name is Madison Carter. I live in a modest one-bedroom apartment just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. It's not much, but it's my space, my independence, my sanctuary. Or, at least it was, until everything started falling apart. It started when the cafe I worked at closed down unexpectedly. The owner, Jerry, a sweet older man who treated his staff like family, had to shut down because of rising costs and back taxes. He didn't even see it coming. One day I was taking inventory, the next day we were all packing up coffee mugs and milk frothers into cardboard boxes. I walked out of there with my final paycheck, which wasn't even enough to cover half of my rent. At first I tried to stay positive. I applied everywhere, retail stores, diners, even some online freelance gigs. I sold a few pieces of old jewelry on Marketplace. I skipped every unnecessary expense. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could make it through the month. But when I got the email from my landlord, Mrs. Kessler, saying rent was due in 2 days or she'd start eviction proceedings, I panicked. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just kept staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had come to this. How had I gone from budgeting every penny responsibly to wondering if I'd be homeless by next week? I kept refreshing job listings, hoping something would magically appear. But the truth is, nobody wants to hire someone desperate. It's like they can smell it on you. I called my mom in Oregon, but she was barely scraping by herself. She offered emotional support, but not financial. My dad was out of the picture, and my closest friend, Kayla, had just moved to Denver for a new job. I didn't want to be the friend who only reached out when she needed help. So I made a choice. I remembered a girl I met during orientation week in college. Her name was Brittany. She used to talk about making money fast, the kind that makes rent look like chump change, she'd say. Back then, I'd laughed it off. But now I found myself scrolling back through old Instagram messages and typing, "Hey Britt, random I know, but do you still do that side hustle you mentioned in college? I could really use some extra cash." She replied fast, almost too fast. "Hey girl, I do, and honestly, it's saved me more times than I can count. Want me to send you a link to the agency?" Agency. That word made it feel official, like it wasn't something shady or dangerous. But deep down, I knew what she meant. She was part of an upscale companionship service. It wasn't illegal, and technically it was all above board. Clients were background checked, meetings were scheduled in public places, and everything was managed professionally. But still, it wasn't what I ever imagined myself doing. I clicked the link. The site was polished and discreet. I created a profile with a fake name, chose safe boundaries, and submitted a couple of recent photos. I told myself I was just browsing, just exploring. But when I got a message the next morning from a client offering $800 for dinner and company at a high-end restaurant, reality hit me in the face. That was more than my rent. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. $800. One night. No physical contact required, just conversation and companionship. It felt almost surreal, but it also felt like survival. I said yes. The man, Charles, was in his late 40s, successful, clean-cut, and polite. We met at a steakhouse downtown. He wore an expensive suit and had kind eyes. We talked about books, the economy, and our favorite vacation spots. It was easy. Almost too easy. He didn't make me feel uncomfortable, and I kept reminding myself I wasn't doing anything illegal or dangerous. At the end of the night, he handed me an envelope with 8 crisp $100 bills. I took a long breath. That was it. I could pay my rent. And I did. I walked into the rental office the next morning and paid the full amount in cash. Mrs. Kessler didn't ask questions. She just thanked me and moved on. As I walked out of that building, I felt a strange mix of relief and shame. I had done what I had to do, right? But it didn't stop there. A week later, I got another message. Then another. Word travels fast in those circles, and soon I was getting offers from wealthier clients, some offering more than $1,000 for simple evenings of companionship. I told myself I was just doing this until I found a real job, until I could get back on my feet. But the truth was, the money became addicting. It felt like a secret superpower. I didn't have to worry about late bills or calling my mom crying. I could buy groceries without calculating each item. I could breathe. Then came Marcus. He was different. Younger than the others, maybe mid-30s, charming and intense. He booked me for an overnight event at a fundraising gala in Scottsdale. He requested me specifically. Said he liked how genuine I seemed. I dressed in a navy blue gown, borrowed from Brittany, and met him at the venue. Everything started fine. He was funny, well-spoken, the kind of guy who knew how to make you feel like the only person in the room. But as the night wore on, he started getting handsy. Nothing that crossed the boundaries at first, but it made me uneasy. When I told him gently that I didn't feel comfortable with certain things, his demeanor shifted. He laughed it off in public, but behind closed doors, his tone turned cold. He reminded me that he had paid for a full night, that he expected more. That was when I panicked. I called the agency's emergency line, and thankfully, they stepped in fast. A coordinator showed up and pulled me from the hotel before things escalated. They told me Marcus had been flagged before, and he was now blacklisted. Still, something inside me broke that night. When I got home, I sat in the shower for an hour, letting the water wash over me like it could somehow erase what I felt, used, hollow, disgusted with myself. I stared at the money on the counter and wanted to burn it. That night I decided I was done. I deactivated my profile and blocked the agency's number. I couldn't keep trading pieces of myself just to survive. The next morning, I woke up with a pit in my stomach, not from fear or regret, but from realization. I had made a choice to pay my rent in the only way I thought I could. And now, even though I wasn't homeless, I felt more lost than ever. I regretted it, not just for what I did, but for how easily I justified it. A week later, I got a job at a bookstore cafe. It didn't pay much, but it was honest work. I started rebuilding my life slowly, bit by bit. I picked up extra shifts, took surveys online for spare cash, and began tutoring kids in my building. It wasn't glamorous, and some days I still struggled. But I could look in the mirror again. Sometimes I still get messages. New numbers, new offers. I delete them without reading. I share this story not because I'm proud of what I did, but because I know how many people out there are walking that same line between dignity and desperation. When you're drowning, any rope looks like a lifeline. But not every rope pulls you up, some just drag you deeper. I made a tough choice to pay my rent, and now I regret it, not because I survived, but because I lost a part of myself in the process. But I'm learning, slowly, to forgive myself. And that's the hardest part of all.